when I committed myself at 9 years old to start playing basketball like full time, because growing up I did every sport. I did basketball, I did soccer, I did track, I did baseball 1 year. But 9 years old was when I really dedicated myself to really just focusing on basketball. The atmosphere of it, just getting better, being in the gym, just having fun, meeting new people. Especially being from Toronto, you get to meet people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So it's kind of being able to experience that and just have basketball take you to so many different places. At the time it was, across Ontario playing OBA. Then as you get older, playing AAU basketball, then it's the States. And then, my last year at Nipissing, then ended up going to Portugal and Spain for a week. So just the opportunities that it presented and just be able just to have fun and just to get better. That was something that really drew me to basketball. I always tell people I didn't know about Nipissing until 2017. And what happened was basically, I went to St. John Paul II in high school in Scarborough for grade 11 and 12. So 2017, we won our TCAA championships and we qualified for OPSA, which everyone knows is the big provincial championships for high school basketball, especially back in the 2000s when there was no prep schools. So then I asked my coach, so where are you going? Where's OPSA this year? And they said it was in Canada College in Nipissing University in North Bay. I looked at my coach, I was like, where is North Bay? I was like, what is Nipissing University? I've never heard of the school in my life. We go there March 2017. We did okay in the tournament. Like, we didn't win it, but we still went pretty far. We were consolation finalists. And it was, when I tell you it was cold, and it was freezing rain, and when the ice was icy, I'm never coming back here again. Never coming back here again. So I thought that was the last time I see North Bay. Fast forward 2 years later, I finished high school. I played prep basketball. And then my coach, Coach Michael Jack, who now coaches Centennial College, he said, hey, like there's a coach I can reach out to, and like named Thomas Corey, who's out of Goma at the time. So he came to one of my practices. He actually came to the wrong practice. So I always tell this story. He came to the wrong practice. He's supposed to come to my prep practice. He ended up coming to my CYBL practice. But anyways, he came to the practice. He liked me. We started a conversation. And then I was originally going to go to Algoma. So if people don't know, I was originally supposed to go to Algoma. And then I applied for Algoma on OUAC. And then I think maybe a week later, he gives me a phone call and said, hey, Taijon, I just wanted to let you know, I got the job at Nipissing. I'm like, I just applied to Algoma. He's like, I know. He's like, but I want you to come with me. So I thought about it, talked to my parents. We ended up doing a tour. I luckily, because of being an officer, I knew about North Bay and Nipissing. So it was closer to home. It was 3.5 hours away from home versus Sault Ste. Marie, which is all the way west, which is about 9-10 hours. So it was closer as a drive. Did the tour, liked the school, got to talk to coach more. And what did it for me was once he made my mom feel comfortable, that was it for me. Because my dad was always, my dad's a sports guy, so that was easy. That's a conversation, but more so my mom, because I was her youngest kid. So once he made her feel comfortable, that's when I knew, okay, coach was the right person for me. I thought Nipissing was a good fit. It's a small school, opportunity to really make a relationship with the professors, and be able to do big things, which we'll talk about later, obviously. But yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at Nipissing when I was originally supposed to go to Algoma. So it was kind of a full circle moment from starting off at OPSA and then eventually ending up at Nipissing for the next 5 years. I enjoyed my first year. I think, when you're 19 years old and you're going away to school for the first time, you don't know what to expect. And I was obviously that same boat. It was my first time away from home, but I built relationships with our vets pretty quickly. So Quentin and Shanda Ashite, Jerice Kazumba, Justin Shaver. I made a lot of Justin Hill. I can't forget Jay Hill. I made a lot of relationships with my vets pretty quickly, and I always say each vet kind of had their own purpose for me. I had the vets that were there for off the court. I had the vets who were there for on the court. I had vets who were able to help me in the classroom. Each of them served its own purpose and kind of contributed to my development in certain ways. But I enjoyed my first year. COVID happened and that kind of derailed things. But then, in the late years, obviously once, the anti-racism stuff happened, I started getting more involved. That's when I really started to really make my experience more than what it was, because I always said that I think at the beginning I was falling into the trap of just being a student athlete in terms of just going to school, playing basketball and going home, and that's it. I didn't really do anything else. So after 2021, with the whole COVID and George Floyd thing happened, and I started getting more involved and doing more events, I think that's when I really started to see what else I can be. And I think that's when I really started to become the best version of myself and who I really wanted to be, by being able to not just be an athlete, but also be someone who's an advocate in the community, someone who could be a voice for, OUA, youth sports, someone who can make big connections and do big things. So I think being at a small school in Nipissing gave me the opportunity to do that, because I always tell people I don't think I would have had the opportunity to do such a things, or the things I was able to do so quickly, had it been at a bigger institution where there's more to jump, hoops to jump over, or more things to take into consideration. I think, God obviously had a plan for me to be at that school, and obviously panned out for the best. And I can only say nothing but good things about my experience to help me to get where I am today. I was 20 years old, so this is going back to 2020. George Floyd got murdered. Obviously, all the stuff happened with the statement, stuff like that. At the time, Nipissing didn't have the best statement, which eventually they changed to a better statement. So I just want to put that for the record. But it let me know that there's obviously some things that need to be addressed, systemically, and just things that can improve. North Bay is obviously predominantly white, probably white population. So obviously being a minority, there's a lot of things I had to take into consideration. So going into 2021, I co-founded our Black student group, New Base, which stood for Nipissing University Black Association for Student Expression. So I was co-founder and was the president of that for the inaugural year. When we came back to campus in 2021 for the 21-22 season, I knew I wanted to do something that was more impactful, because the first year of COVID was kind of like this. It was online, it was virtual, we were educating people, but I knew I wanted to come back. I wanted to make something that had real impact. So then the same year with the NBA bubble, when they came back to finish the season with Disney, and they had all the stuff with the t-shirts and the names on the back. So it's like, okay, that's one thing. And then my first year, youth sports, as you all know, do Shoot for the Cure, which is obviously the only thing that's for youth sports, women's basketball. And I saw how successful it was my first year. So I was like, okay, if there's a way to combine the Shoot for the Cure and then what the NBA bubble did, kind of with anti-racism, kind of spin to it, I might have something. So then that May of 2021, I still have it to this day. I have like a whole list of names that come up. It was like Ball for All, Equity Game, Diversity Game. But then the second last one I bolded was Shoot for Change. And I thought about it, I was like, I like that name, Shoot for Change. So I talked to my coach about it, and probably that spring, and then he got on board with it. Then I met with our athletic director, women's basketball coach, said, hey, I want to do this event called Shoot for Change. I had a whole presentation kind of saying this is what's going to look like. We'll sell t-shirts, we'll have raffles, we can have PSA videos, you name it. And then they got on board. Then we fast forward to my third year, so like I said, the 21-22 year, we plan to do it with Ontario Tech, because that same year is when I also created Athletes for Change, because that's when all these Black student athlete groups were starting from Ontario Tech with the BAA, U Auto with BSAC, U of T was the first one to start BBA. So because I looked at that, I knew that the only school that was in Athletes for Change that was in the East that year, because that's the year that they divided both the East and the West, so we didn't even see half the league, was Ontario Tech. So it worked out perfectly that because the people that ran their Black student group was basketball, it made for the perfect opportunity to say, hey, you guys want to do this game? They said, let's do it. They talked to their school. Everyone was on board. It was originally supposed to happen in January 2022. But if you remember, that's when Omicron hit. So that's when we were away for 6 weeks. There's a whole thing with OUA not having elite status. So we were all locked out. We didn't know if we were going to have a season. And at that point, I literally got to the point where I was like, Shoot for Change is not happening. Let's just put out the PSA video. We'll try it again next year. But then we get word that the season's coming back. And we were the only sport that was able to get all of their games rescheduled, because some other sports had some of the games lost because of that time frame. We were the only sport that had every single game rescheduled. So it got those two games that was supposed to be the January 28th and the 30th, I believe, got pushed to March 11th and March 13th. And I remember Ontario Tech reached out to us and said, hey, you guys still want to do the game? And I was like, yeah, we still want to do the game. So we speeded it back up of the process of planning it. And then it took another 6 weeks. And then March 11th, 2022, we did the first Shoot for Change anti-racism basketball game. The goal was to get $10,000, because at Nipissing, to start a BIPOC bursary, you had to have at least $10,000 endowment. We ended up getting $18,000 that night. So we exceeded expectations, and it became a big news. CTV covered it, U Sports covered it, OUA covered it. It blew up so quickly. And it was really just about making a difference and trying to do something that had never been done before, because up to that point, there was never a BIPOC bursary at Nipissing. So for people who looked like me, there was no financial opportunities. But to be able to see what the NBA did, to use their platform for bigger issues, to see what youth sport does every year for Shoot for the Cure, it showed me that us athletes can really have an impact. So to be able to create that event at only 21 years old, and to have done it during a pandemic, which was very difficult to do, and to pull it off, is probably, at this point, my greatest life achievement. I'm only basically 25, so hopefully there's a lot of life to live, but at that point, it was definitely the biggest thing I had ever done. And currently at the University of Windsor, pursuing my master's degree, and I work with the basketball team as the Director of Basketball Operations. And one of the things that shout out Chris Chang, who's also the former Nipissing coach, one of the things that we talked about when I first took on this role last year was that he wanted to keep doing Shoot for Change. Because my last year at Nipissing we actually did it with the University of Windsor. It was pretty cool to not only be able to do an event that's kind of carried on, but to also see the other coaches, respect the work that I've done, the kind of the work that I've tried to do to make the league more equitable, right? So I think coming to Windsor, then now doing a shoot for change here, kind of seeing how, it's continued to grow and continue to build. I think it's something that's really special because it started from a place of just a student athlete just wanting to make a difference, but to see it now come to fruition, bursaries have been spent, we at Nipissing 34K has been raised, like other schools have done it. Like it's a really special thing to see and something I don't take for granted. I don't think people realize the impact that we have, especially if you're in a small university like Nipissing, right? Like obviously there's schools like U of T and U Auto and Carleton who are in big cities, but for the most part, a lot of the schools in the OUA are in smaller cities, right? So there's no pro team, there's no famous people around. So you are really the faces of the community. So I think a lot of times people don't realize that what you say, what you do has a reflection on impact, right? Because when you look at the posters, when you look at social media, look at graphics, like in small cities, like whether it's Kingston with Queens or North Bay with Nipissing, or even Sudbury like Laurentian, or even Sault Ste. Marie with Algoma, or wherever the case may be, like you are the face. So a lot of times people will look to you. You have little kids who come to the games who, you have summer camps, all these schools do. So people look up to you and think, hey, like I want to be like that guy, or you're my favorite player, like whatever. So I think once athletes realize the impact that they can have in a positive light, I think it's important to channel that, because ultimately you want to have an impact. Like you want to, when you're done playing, yes, you're a good basketball player, but the ultimate question you want to answer is, how do you want to be remembered? Last year, so going into my senior season, I know I wanted to apply for the Wayne Teresa MB Fellowship with the Toronto Raptors. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's a program that the Raptors started back in 2017, where recipients can win the chance to work with the Raptors for a season. You get to work in different departments like culture and inclusion, equipment, front office, travel, you name it. So I originally applied for it in 2021. I didn't get it. So I told myself I was going to wait till I graduate, which was 2024. I applied for it. I was one of 11 finalists to have a chance to work for the Raptors. I did the 2-day process. I didn't win it, but because they were impressed and knew that I wanted to work in culture and inclusion, they offered me a 4-month internship. So throughout the summer of 2024, I was able to work for the Toronto Raptors on the culture and inclusion team as social impact intern, which was really exciting. Every kid who had a dream to play in the NBA. Didn't play in the NBA, but now I get to say I worked in the NBA. That's kind of cool. And then right now, currently, I'm working for Canada Basketball as a partnership marketing and community impact. So kind of cool to, kind of my post-U Sports career to be able to say I'm currently working for the two biggest basketball organizations in the country. So definitely a big thing, and hopefully an inspiration for people. It's like I said, I have a succession plan. If you have a succession plan, great things can happen to you. I did a docuseries called The Road to Convocation. It was actually my senior project where I was able to get 6 credits for it. And basically I came up with the idea because if you guys all watched during COVID, everyone watched The Last Dance, I'm sure. And obviously Last Chance U, which was big on Netflix, especially the basketball version, football too. But I wanted to do something where I could really tell the story of my senior year, but also to kind of my journey from being from Scarborough to North Bay. So I was able to do that during my whole senior year. We had 6 episodes. It got picked up by Bell. Actually, I'm lying, sorry. It had 4 episodes. 4 episodes. It got picked up by Bell. It went number 1, for 5 straight weeks upon release. So it did really well on the platform. And really it was just an opportunity, like I said, to really, I guess to talk about U Sports. It was really an opportunity to showcase kind of what's being done, kind of what's the stories. I want people to learn who we are outside of our jersey, right? Because I feel a lot early on, we had a lot of, things to figure out, because originally they wanted it just to be about me. And I said, have it be led by me, but have other people have stories. So we had a lot of storylines. Like I knew going into my senior year, we had, the Portugal trip. We had Algoma coming to Nipissing. So obviously with Coach, I know we had our Laurentian, which is 705 challenge, shoot for change once again. Like I knew there's a lot of opportunities for storylines, and I wanted to be able to tell those stories authentically and to really show behind the scenes footage of what a U Sports season is like. Because a lot of times people see these clips, and I've seen other schools do it, but they really just show, the game day, like talking about the game, and that's it. But I wanted to show kind of who's people's stories, what is like learning disabilities, what is struggles. One of my teammates is an international student, like what is that struggle like? Like I wanted to tell a different storylines that have never been tapped before, and really showcase kind of different angles of the student athlete that people can gravitate to. So even if you're not a basketball fan, you can be gravitated, or you can see yourself or see something in someone else that you can relate to. So that was my biggest thing. It's something I'm super proud of. Like I said, for it to go number 1 for 5 straight weeks on a big platform like Bell 5 TV is something pretty cool. And like I said earlier, I really just hope that it's something that can be done in the future, not just for Nipissing, but I think just for youth sports, just more schools getting a resource behind to tell stories. Because even like Windsor this year, like I was telling our volleyball team, like Windsor next year, they're hosting youth sports national championship for volleyball. Could you imagine the docu-series that can be told from that whole season, from the journey to nationals? Like there's a lot of cool things coming up. So that's something I'm really proud of that I was able to do at Nipissing. It was kind of like my last big project to tell that story. So yeah, the road to convocation. If you do have Bell 5 TV, you can watch on Bell 5 TV. And then yeah, that's where you can find it. Obviously, I'll send you the link, but that's where you can find it.